Welcome to Making It Last. I'm your host, Regina DeMeo, and with me today is Allison Anderson of Manna, and we're talking about how Manna has been helping families here for over 30 years. Am I right?
30 years.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So, is it mostly through volunteers or donations that you're able to help so many families?
I think it's mostly through both. What we do now is we have a lot of volunteers that come in. We had over 52,000 hours of volunteerism last year.
Wow.
And that was, I believe, around 19,000 volunteers. This year we're up over 20. So our small staff of 20 people is supplemented by all of those volunteers that come in.
Okay.
We also receive food donations from the community. So there's a lot of people who do their own food drive, or we go out to grocery stores and pick up items that they don't need. And we bring those in. Those are our food donations, and those take care of a lot of things.
Are there specific things that you ask that people donate, or have a list?
We do. We have a healthy food drive wish list. It's actually on our website. It's mannafood.org, and if you just scroll up to the top, there's a healthy food drive wish list on there, and it's a really great resource. What we try to say is, if you wouldn't feed it to your family, don't feed it to ours. So we're looking for food that's healthy, nutritious, more local produce, things like beans and rice, whole wheat pastas, things like that.
Do you also get fresh fruit, or is it mostly canned?
We do. We get a lot of fresh produce from the farmers markets, and we also contract with a couple of farms in the area, like Red Wiggler or 1 Acre Farm, and we pick up farm shares from them. So
wow.
I think we had over 120,000 pounds of fresh produce last year.
Oh my God, that's great.
It's great. Yep.
So, I have to say that I think that we in Montgomery County kind of live in this little bubble, right? And when I was looking through your website, some of the statistics are really quite amazing. I mean, I knew that 15% of Americans are living in poverty, but you just don't think that's going to be in our own backyard, right? And yet, what I was reading is that 1 in 3 Montgomery County kids are actually getting either reduced lunch or free lunches through those school programs. So is that really true?
It's true. It's 32.3% of Montgomery County public school children are receiving what they call farms, free and reduced priced meals.
Okay. Wow.
Yep.
So can you tell us a little bit about the effects of hunger on children?
Well, think of the effects of hunger on yourself. If you don't eat breakfast in the morning, you get to work and you're kind of tired, or you have that energy, but you lose that energy around mid-morning, and you need a snack. You need something to eat. When you're a kid and you're going to school, you're starting school at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m., and you haven't had anything to eat, and maybe you haven't had anything really nutritious over the weekend, your Monday morning is shot already. You really can't learn. You can't think. And I think part of that hunger in this county is, it really affects the children. It really affects their learning and their test scores and everything that comes with that.
So how would a family know that they qualify for like a free or reduced lunch?
Anyone who qualifies for SNAP benefits, which is what they call food stamps now.
Okay.
Anyone who qualifies for energy assistance or any of the other county programs that help with assistance, you automatically qualify for Manna. So you can definitely tell by that. But even if you're just struggling, if you feel like you don't have enough money to pay your bills, the easiest thing to do is just to call a referral number, and that's just 301-424-1130. Call a referral office. We have volunteers there all day long, 8 to 4, and they'll tell you. They'll say, you qualify, and most people do.
Wow. So mainly, like the national programs are the WIC, right? Women, infants, children, the SNAP, and then the hot lunches, right? But how would somebody get to Manna?
So people get through Manna through those other assistance programs.
I see.
Usually if you have any sort of counselor or someone who helps you with SNAP, things like that, they'll direct you to Manna and say, there's also this resource that you can use.
And we were talking about this just a little bit ago, right? So some people think like, okay, that's so never going to be something I have to deal with. And yet, like, we really are all, I see it in the divorces I do. People are just like one step removed from losing everything. All of a sudden the divorce takes place, they're not focusing at work, they lose their job, they're not taking care of themselves, they, get cancer or what, like, they're just one step removed from possibly actually needing your services. Do you see that a lot?
We see it all the time. There are a lot of people in this county who think, I've got a great job, I've got a great house, I've got a great car, I'm fine. But again, it's that one job loss or that one health bill that just takes over. that car accident where you can't pay to buy a new car, how are you going to get to work? You can fall so easily from the middle class to really needing assistance. And we see people every day who either used to be volunteers or used to bring in food to Manna and who are now requesting assistance.
Wow. I was looking at the Self-Sufficiency Standard, which you have on your website, and that was also fascinating. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. It's something that all the different counties do. So across the U.S. there's different self-sufficiency standards. So the poverty index is something that's a national level.
Right.
And the poverty index, I think, is something like for Montgomery County, if you're one person with a toddler and a school-age child, you have to make over, I think, $14,000 a year. Well, it just doesn't, if you make over $14,000, then you don't qualify for any assistance, which is kind of hard. You imagine $14,000 doesn't go very far.
Right.
In Montgomery County, because it's so expensive, the housing's so expensive, everything's so expensive here, it's actually $70,000 for a family of 3. And so people who fall below that level really can't pay any sort of bills outside of the bills that they have, and often food is the first bill to get cut. So when you have to pay the rent, you have to pay the utilities, you have to pay the car insurance, where do you cut? Food.
That makes sense. It's so sad. So who are the people that you usually help the most? Is it families or elderly?
It's everyone. We don't have specific statistics on that, but I would say it's about a third children, a third families, and a third seniors.
Okay.
We do have a program called Smart Sacks. It's our Goldberg Smart Sacks program, named for Karen Goldberg, who actually helped us begin the program. And that works in Montgomery County Public Schools, so that serves about 2,012 children this year in 55 schools. So that's a big number of kids.
Yeah.
And then through our Food for Families, which is where clients come in every day and line up for 70 pounds of food each, that was 184,215 families last year. So a lot of people. That was individuals, and it was about 40,000 households of people. So, and then we also do some bread drops and drops of the actual food packages at senior apartment complexes throughout Montgomery County.
I was going to ask, like, if seniors can't get to you, do you make an effort to get to them?
We do. There's a few places that we actually will bring all of the clients' orders to them, and they can distribute to the seniors in the building.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, we try and make it as easy as possible, and it's really hard to get to yet another place if you're working 2 jobs. You're too tired, and we try to make it easy. We have about 6 satellite locations that people can go to in Long Branch, in Wheaton, one in Germantown. So people can go there if they can't make it all the way to Manna, and those are open later at night.
Which is your headquarters?
Headquarters is in Gaithersburg, so we're off of Gaither Road, sort of near the Best Buy and the Home Depot over there.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And kids that need credits for school, like I think now they're required to have a certain number of community service hours, so they could do that through you.
They can do it through us. The best way to do that is to just email volunteer@mannafood.org. And usually kids under the age of 18, they have to do things like our food drives or help with family box packing night, things that are sort of outside our normal operation hours.
Okay.
During the 8 to 4 hours, we ask that people are 18 and older because there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of machinery, and we don't want anyone to get hurt.
No, that makes sense. Do you get a lot of repeat volunteers?
We do. We have people come in every day for years at a time. We have people that have been there since the early 90s.
Wow.
Yep.
And I heard that you're like all booked with the families that want to volunteer. You're booked through May?
The family box packing night, it's only a few nights a month, and it's actually booked until May. It's wonderful.
That's
We're really
great.
excited. Yeah.
So, the other question I wanted to ask you was, if people wanted to volunteer, the best way to do that would be through your website?
Our website, you can go on and look at the volunteer options. You can sort of pick and choose what's right for you. And we have a lot of options. We have the during the day option. There's night box packing that happens, all sorts of food drives that we have, events that we have. The easiest way to get more information or to sign up is, again, to email volunteer@mannafood.org.
Okay. And now, if, let's say somebody, you can see that they're in need of more than just food, right? Like there's other stuff going on. Do you guys refer a lot of stuff out?
We don't specifically refer, but we do usually have a booth set up in our front office where people come in, and some days it'll be the SNAP resources, and some days it'll be Capitol Area Food Bank or Maryland Food Bank or FRAC, which is the Food and Research Action Center.
Okay.
And so it'll be people that have additional resources. Manna's food boxes, although it's 70 pounds of food each time, people can only come once every 30 days. And so it's meant to be...
Like, you mean one family can only come... Oh, I see. So it's restricted.
It's meant to be a supplemental food. It's supposed to be about a 3 to 5 day supply. I could make that 70 pounds last me a couple weeks. You know, my husband and I could make it last a while. But if you've got a lot of people in your household, it's sometimes not enough.
Okay.
But people are able to go to all the other food pantries and soup kitchens and things like that in the area. And there are tons of different assistance programs, again, like SNAP or WIC, that they can sign up for.
Oh, okay, I see. Because I was wondering about that. Like, could you go every day? Do these people... It's not like that.
No, there's USDA rules that mean that we can only have people come once every 30 days.
Okay.
Because we do give out TFAP, which is the supplemental food for the USDA. And people can only get that once every 30 days.
Is that like the government cheese?
Government cheese.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like
Yep. It's cornflakes mostly right now, and milk and government cheese. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that actually, because when I was growing up, we actually had food stamps, and I hated that government-issued cheese.
Yep.
I mean, obviously it met its need, but
Yep.
you know, like one thing that like I have to tell you, like I keep it in my fridge just as a reminder. It's like, okay, if everything else has gone wrong that day, I open up my fridge, and there's the Velveeta,
The block of Velveeta.
And it's like, oh, like that individually sliced cheese that is like so wonderful. It's like, okay, life is pretty good because I actually can have the Velveeta.
I don't have to eat the block. Yeah, yep.
Yeah, but you know, it's funny. Like I think that a lot of people, you know, they don't talk about some of the things from the past. Like people are shocked when I say that. Like, yeah, when I was growing up, I mean, it was really, really rough, and we all need help. Do you counsel people at all about like it's okay that you're going through this hard time?
We try to be really clear that we're not judging anyone. We're open to everyone. We're not looking at you. And if we have people who come in with television cameras or reporters that come in, I'll announce ahead of time. There's a reporter here.
Okay.
If you don't want to be on camera, if you don't want to talk to them, please just let me know. Or raise your hand if you do want to be on camera, and then I'll take people aside. We try to make it not embarrassing at all to be there, because it's not an embarrassing thing. A lot of people really need help, and it's okay to ask for help. If you need it, it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah, no, I think you're totally right. I mean, a lot of my clients, unfortunately, when they're going through a divorce, it's embarrassing, but it's a reality. You know, you can't afford 2 homes, and a lot of people move back in with their parents.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the thing that you're expecting to do.
You don't want to.
I'm at 40. I'm going to pack up my bag and go live in the basement. No one wants to do that. But we all have things that happen.
Life happens, you know.
Yeah.
And thankfully there are resources to help you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, we're going to take a little bit of a short break, and then we will be right back.
So, Malcolm, you do know that energy savers last 6 times longer than ordinary light bulbs.
This isn't my room. It's Baron Davis's.
Baron Davis, the basketball player? This is his room?
Yep.
Interesting, because we have Baron Davis right here. Baron, do you live here?
No.
I don't mean that, Baron Davis.
Millions of kids are using their energy wisely. What's your excuse?
Welcome back to Making It Last, where we share ideas to help families tackle major issues. I'm your host, Regina DeMeo, and with me today is Allison from Manna, and we've been talking about all the things that Manna is doing in this community. Thanks so much for being here, Allison.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to dispel some myths that I think we all, sometimes play into. And for example, there's this thing about the notion that, okay, the people going to Manna must be like homeless or completely unemployed, and is that true?
It's actually very opposite from that.
Okay.
A lot of the people that come to Manna are sometimes working 2 jobs. Sometimes have a couple people in the family working 2 jobs. These are people who have a place to live usually and a kitchen to cook food, but just aren't making ends meet.
So that ties into what I guess you guys refer to as the working poor, right? And some of the statistics are really amazing. I mean, and in your website it says that the minimum wage in Maryland is about $7.25 an hour.
I think it's, around $7.25 right now.
Okay. And yet, from the studies that you've all done, you actually need $17 an hour just to meet your basic needs here. Is that right?
That's true. You need at least that much just to pay your rent, just to pay your utility bills. And so when you don't have enough money to pay those things, the first thing that gets cut, again, is food.
So I guess the problem is that the housing here is astronomical,
Yes.
right? And people need a place to live, so they're going to pour the first check that they get from their employer towards paying for their rent. And then the next thing would be
Transportation. You've got to get to work so that you can pay that bill. And, although we have a very wonderful system here, we have the metro, we have the ride-on buses, and it's great, but that costs money. And a lot of people, if they have a car, cars are really expensive, gas is expensive, changing your oil is expensive, making sure all the belts and things are working, really expensive. And if you don't, again, the bus, it adds up.
Yeah, it's funny because, I have this friend who has lived in the burbs most of his life and doesn't really take the metro very often. And then I was telling him, I was like, well, everywhere I've worked in the city, right, it's $200 a month to park if I'm going to drive down. And even if I don't drive, it's still $200 because by the time I pay for the metro parking and a round-trip fare, it's still $200. And he was totally shocked. Couldn't believe that that's the price of just getting to my job.
And a lot of places, I know, back in the early 2000s before the recession, what people did was they sort of built that into your employment agreement, and you would have maybe a $200 supplement that would get you to work. That's not really the case anymore. So even when people are working great government jobs in the city, they're still paying $200 to get there.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends that also used to get gas cards.
They don't do them.
No. You're right. So companies are cutting costs where they can in order to, I guess, maintain the labor. But then all these costs, these perks, are being shifted to the laborers who now have to take care of those expenses.
Exactly. And it really hurts everyone. It hurts the middle class. It hurts the working poor. It hurts everyone.
So after people are done paying for these ridiculous housing expenses and their transportation to get to work, if somebody doesn't know how to budget properly for food, are there classes available?
There are. We have some fantastic classes, actually. Our nutritionist, she's on staff all the time. Her name is Jenna, and she's wonderful. She teaches classes through Manna, which are free to everyone. Anyone in the community can come. You don't have to be a client. You don't have to be a volunteer. We encourage people to come down and actually take these classes. She has some wonderful ones, 5 meals for $5 or $16 for the week for food, and just really great classes. And she'll teach you how to make great food from things you may not think about, like sweet potatoes. How do you make a sweet potato into something that your kids are going to want to eat?
Right.
Yep. She's
wow, that's
fantastic.
amazing. Yep. I can't imagine $16 a week, right?
Yep. Well, when you think about it, the SNAP benefits are $5 a day, so it's even less than that,
That's how much SNAP gives people.
I'm sorry, it's $5 a week.
Oh, wow.
Yep, for one person, right? I think. Sorry.
No, that's okay. It's funny because I see it in a different way. So a lot of my clients that used to, when we used to prepare budgets to submit to the court, right, about how much people are spending, we have to do that on a regular basis. So over the last 14 years, I've seen some amazing budgets, ranging from, people that need $30,000 a month to support a family, because that's how they roll, all the way to somebody who's barely making ends meet for a family of 3 with $5,000 a month. And it's hard.
It's hard. You can do it, but it's really difficult.
Yeah. So, I guess I'm just wondering, when people come to you and they're starting to go down that slippery slope, right? They're starting to realize that, oh my gosh, there are these medical bills that I'm not being able to pay, and meanwhile I'm not feeding myself properly, and you see that slippery slope. Who do you see that happens to the most? Is it people who are not that well educated, or do you even see, because I've seen some pretty high-level professionals go down that slippery slope.
It's everyone, and I think just I haven't done any sort of scientific study on it, but I think from watching the people come in, it's usually people who are very comfortable in the middle class or are very used to being able to pay for all of those things, and they don't realize how quick of a slide it is down. And I think it hits them the hardest. Whereas if you're maybe used to living on a budget, you're going to learn how to tighten that budget a little bit more, or you're going to know how to ask for help. But if you're not used to asking for help, I think it's a really difficult slide.
Yeah. I mean, the hardest thing in my job is to kind of go through people's budgets and say, yeah, you see how you're spending like $12 a day going out to lunch? We need to cut that
Stop
out.
that, yeah.
Right? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, you need to bring your lunch.
Yeah.
Right? And I've seen it with my peers. Like,
Yeah.
my peers, like, where are we going to cut? Okay, so, you look at people's budgets, and it's like, they used to spend $100 a month on manicures, pedicures. Guess what? We're going to cut that in half.
Do it yourself.
Right? But there's this trickle effect, right? Because if these people aren't requiring these services or going as often, then those service providers are not getting the income they once got. It's like we're all really so connected, and I can see it. Do you see it?
Oh, I see it all the time. It's a very connected web of everything that happens. If you're not going to the grocery store, then the people at the grocery store don't need as many people, so they're laying people off. If you're not going to get your manicure, your haircut, those people don't need to work as many hours, and then they're coming to Manna.
Right.
Yep.
And like when you go to the department stores, it's not nearly as crowded as it used to be. I mean, there's all these things saying that things are getting better, and maybe they are, but I think, like people look at like the unemployment rate, and there's a lot of people that maybe are underemployed even though they're not unemployed.
I think we've seen that a lot too. There's a lot of people who maybe used to be lawyers and doctors and who are now maybe just administrators or administrative assistants even, and they're making a quarter of what they made before. And so they're really sort of, again, sliding down that scale, and they're not being able to provide what they used to be able to.
Yeah, I mean, I've had at least 5 or 6 lawyers recently who are getting divorced, which is why they're talking to me. And, they got fired from these high-level jobs at big firms, but big firms went through this whole layoff process, right? And now they're doing document review for $30 an hour.
Yeah. Yep.
And, I mean, that's a significant drop to take, and then, of course, obviously it affects their families.
Yeah. It affects everyone. I think we sort of thought that the recession was over, and I think everyone likes to tell us that the recession's over and everyone's getting a job now, but people are more underemployed, or people have just dropped out of the workforce and are staying home, and there's one breadwinner where right now, really, to live in Montgomery County, you need at least 2 incomes. And so we see that really affects people, and they end up coming to Manna just saying, I just can't make ends meet anymore.
So you're seeing even intact, because I always see the families that are breaking up, but you're seeing intact families.
Intact families who used to be able to provide that $30,000 a month to buy whatever they wanted to buy, and who are really struggling now with learning how to budget on a lower income, with only having 1 income instead of 2. It's really families that are just struggling.
Wow. So what other resources, like obviously you can't do everything for these people, right? So do you farm stuff out and give them, are there other resources that you work with?
We do. We have a list of other resources. We work with a ton of other nonprofits in the county. So we actually hold food for a lot of the soup kitchens, a lot of the shelters in the area. We hold their TFAP food, the government cheese, and we help people through those services. So we'll actually direct them to those services if they need those services. We also work with places like Arc of Montgomery or Interfaith Works or A Wider Circle, and those places will provide clothing and furniture and sometimes job training, things like that. So things that we don't provide, we're just food.
Right.
Yep.
Right, but I can see how, it all does connect, right? And somebody who's not able to feed their, kids may also not be able to clothe them very well.
Yep.
So there's got to be other agencies that you work with.
Yep, there are some really fantastic resources in this county. There are at least 10 that I can think of off the top of my head that do things like job training and things like furniture and clothing. So the resources are out there, and I think people just are either too embarrassed or don't know where to look. And it's always a great thing to just call 311 or call Manna. We've got a list of other agencies.
So when they call 311, they can actually ask for resources?
You can ask for resources through that. So if you need food resources, if you need clothing resources, you can ask for that on 311.
I had no idea. So, I mean, the thing is, so many of us are not used to asking. I mean, I did when I was little, right? Okay,
yeah.
right. So I couldn't control the fact that I was definitely born into an economically disadvantaged family. But then I got some great scholarships. I went to some great schools and kind of, went into a whole different world. And it's really sad and it's very hard. It takes its toll on me when I see my own peers, they're getting divorced and that's the first big hit. And then they spiral down.
Yeah. I think people don't really think about, how did my parents put food on the table?
No.
You never thought, maybe they went to the soup kitchens or maybe they went to places like Manna. And I actually had a friend of mine tell me, when I used to use the services in Fairfax County, when she used to go to the Manna over there, she would get free pizza and she would get free food. And I had been staying with her a lot of that time while I was in college, and it never occurred to me that she went to the food bank.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think this is now the time where people have to, get more resourceful, right, and be able to work together and help each other out. I mean...
And that's why we really need volunteers. We always need volunteers. We need people to hold their own food drives. We always need donations. If you donate $1 to Manna, we can turn it into $5 in purchased food.
Really?
We're very, very efficient. About 94 cents of every dollar goes directly to feeding people. We have a very low overhead.
That's amazing. Yeah, because you hear about these, horrible cases where the charities, it's like you give $1 and only 5 cents.
Yeah,
like,
we're the opposite. We only take about 5 cents to keep our lights on and to pay our very small staff, but 94 cents goes directly to feeding people.
That's a great statistic. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, this has been great. So if people wanted to contact you for further information, how would they do that?
The best way to do that, you can just go to our website. It's www.mannafood.org.
Okay.
You can always call our referral office at 301-424-1130, or you can email us at fooddrive@mannafood.org, and that's a great way. It just sends an automatic reply and tells you how to hold your own food drive, how to get food to Manna, and how you can help.
Okay, well, that's great. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So if you have any show ideas or would like to be a guest, please feel free to contact me at genxmarty@gmail.com. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week on Making It Last.